All right, everyone. I'm just going to start the announcements for the day. So, welcome to day one of AWE USA 2021. Woohoo! We are in Grand Ballroom D today, which will feature the retail commerce and advertising track. I'm Heidi. I'm from CG Trader in Arsenal. I'm the track chair today, and I will be introducing all the moderators and the speakers and facilitating the Q&A. So a couple of reminders before we start our first session. The AWE.live, that's the app that you guys can use for the next 3 days. So that's the mobile site, has all the maps and all the information sessions on there. You can put together your own agenda, you can find the exhibitors, and you can also connect with other attendees here. There's also a leaderboard, so attendees with the most engagement on the app itself will win prizes at the end of the conference. The welcome reception is this evening for all AWE attendees, so make sure you have your wristband and your badge with you for entry. It's in the Santa Clara Ballroom inside the hotel, so it's on the second floor from 6 to 8 tonight. There's also a coffee break sponsored by Niantic. It's in the Mission City lobby today, so it's from 10:45 to 11:15. Additionally, there's also the Augie Awards. So this year's the Augies have 15 breakthrough categories, as well as 3 best in show categories. So tomorrow you can catch the Augie Awards on the main stage in the Mission City Ballroom, starting at 7 o'clock, and that's also on the second floor of the Hyatt Hotel. And then so make sure you guys go to the happy hour and the Augie Awards. There's also a playground, so it's the Exhibit D from 6 to 7 p.m. So it's after party at the Glass House in San Jose. So it's about 15 minutes away, and it's from 8 to 11 p.m. There's also going to be a shuttle house going to the Glass House, which will be outside of SCC immediately following the Augies afterwards. Concession stands are open daily and located in the Mission City lobby, so upper level terraces and Great America lobby. AWE 2021 is the hashtag to be using if you want to tweet or post anything on Twitter and LinkedIn. So that will be all the social channels and to be able to find all other posts. Recording sessions, so a reminder that all sessions are being recorded and will be made available for in-person and virtual attendees on the AWE.live platform after the event. So you don't need to take too many pictures if you want to just listen to the full panels. The Expo Hours are from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., so it starts tomorrow on on Wednesday, and then on Thursday it's from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., which will conclude this conference. Be sure to check it out. There's really some cool companies here. And then the Wi-Fi is AWE _ Wi-Fi, and the password is welcome, all lowercase with an exclamation mark. And I would like to say a big thank you to our titanium and gold sponsors of this conference. So the AWE team would like to thank our gold sponsors for their support. Arbor XR, Care AR, a Xerox company, HP, Meta Materials, Plug XR, and a huge thank you to titanium sponsors Niantic, Qualcomm, and Unity Technologies. So we will begin our first panel. I would like to introduce everyone to Linda Ricci. She is the CEO at Decahedralist Consulting, and she's going to be moderating this panel for the coming experience wars, how brands can survive and thrive in the future of XR. She is the founder of Decahedralist Consulting, a boutique strategy and innovation firm with a passion for the intersection of business, technology, and innovation. She works with brands to define their future when emerging technologies are transforming markets. I will let Linda take it away.
Thank you. Got a mouthful, actually. I think I'm going to stand up just because I want to be able to see everybody in the audience as well as all my panelists. I can't quite do that there. We have an amazing panel today, and I want to thank everybody who's on it. We have Tony Parisi, a last-minute substitution, who is maybe going to know something about this subject. We have Sophia Mashasha, we have Yo Schultz, and then virtually we have Nani. Can she hear us? We're working on Nani's dialing, Nani de la Peña. So we have two.
I can hear you great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for dialing in, Nani. I'm glad we can make this work. So we have two OGs
So
on this
sad not to
panel.
be there.
I
So
know.
sad not to be there.
I know. If you guys want to do a quick intro about your backgrounds or what you do, please take a minute or two to do that. Go ahead, Yo.
All right. My name is Yo Schultz. I'm a marketing professor at Brock University. I've been researching about augmented reality marketing since about 2013. Started teaching it, and I kind of hid it away in my digital marketing course in 2014, and students wouldn't know what happened to them, but they liked it at the end. And then back in 2019, I moved to Brock University, where I then launched the worldwide first dedicated augmented reality marketing course for MBA students and undergraduate students.
Awesome. My name is Sophia Mashasha. I have been in the space for about 5 years or so. I currently work for the Air Force's Small Business Innovation Research Program called AFWorks, where they acquire technology like Immersive tech. And then I also do a lot of XR business strategy for XR companies in this space.
Tony Parisi, head of AR and VR ads and e-commerce at Unity. You may know a bit about us, leading 3D creation platform for games across all the platforms, all the AR, VR, XR applications across industries, including digital twin, media and entertainment, storytelling, and so on. My beat there is all about marketing and advertising, and now e-commerce. My aperture has expanded over the last year. I'm now running product strategy for e-commerce and cloud. And we think that it's a big growth area for real-time 3D. So I'm really excited to be able to drop in on this panel. And a little bit about my background. I've been working in the metaverse since. So I was excited to see Ori talk about that and use the M word in the keynote and poke a little fun at it too. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Nani, you want to tell people about you? Because you're another
Sure,
OG.
sure. I think Tony and I probably met in the metaverse when we were babies, but in 2007, I think I entered officially when we built the virtual Guantanamo Bay prison in order to make a place that was off limits to most citizens and press available. And that was done in Second Life. So, relationships on the web are super interesting as people adopt more identities. And then after that, I'm known for having done a lot of work in journalism and virtual reality. How do we take non-gaming content and bring it into virtual and augmented reality? And have done work for many, many brands. The last one being a huge piece with GCDS, which is an Italian brand. We did their Milan fashion show using virtual production, but we also created a WebXR experience so that their clients could come and see the 3D twin of the content that was shown in a flat virtual production stage, and they could wander around in WebXR and check out the actual clothes, shoes, hats, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been trying to figure out the best ways to translate for brands for a very long time, and I've worked for some pretty major players in the field.
Oh, great. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to set the stage. We are here today to talk about the coming XR wars, and I'm going to set the stage for that. What we're talking about is a time a little bit in the future where consumers are swimming in XR every day, all day. Not what we currently have, you hold up the phone, access the app, all the things that, the barriers right now, but when it's actually, we're swimming in it on a daily basis. The looming challenge for brands in that situation is for how to get invited into somebody's personal space and how to stay there and how to hopefully not get blocked off or blocked out, right? So that somebody says, I don't want to see you ever again. XR has so many opportunities for brands, but it also means that consumers will be in the driving seat completely and utterly for what they invite in. And it will be magnitudes greater loss of control for brands than it's ever been before. So let's talk about how to prepare for the near future. And we will use the hot word du jour. I'm going to get it out of the way. We're going to say metaverse now. So everybody, we said it. It's
Drink.
done.
Everybody drink.
Tony wrote the rules. So yeah. And let's get into it. And we have about 45 minutes for chatting. And then I'm going to take questions from the audiences for about 10 minutes. All right? So that is the stage. So panel, let's talk about the session title. I titled it The Coming Experience Wars. It wasn't just for the hype and the attention-seeking phrase. Let's unpack it. And I think, what does XR bring to the mix that is truly innovative and that is going to revolutionize marketing and branding? So Tony, you're smiling. You start.
I was going to head it over to you as the researcher to frame this, but I mean, because I do, I like to frame this stuff all day long. And I'm subbing in for my buddy Keith, who couldn't be here, unfortunately. Keith Soljacek from Publicis. He's this amazing thinker and creative who is really excited about brands and the metaverse and XR and all of these things. And he likes to think about this as a consideration to conversion superhighway. That's his phrase, and I love that. So you have the ability to instantly see something and decide if you like it and then act on it in a way that we haven't had before, because it's so very similar, it's so immediate, and so potentially customized to you. So that is the promise, and I think part of what we're going to dissect today is also that's potentially what's possibly scary about it as well, because it could be so magical and so tailored to what you care about that it could be insidiously so. Right? But that kind of potential is what's always excited me personally about XR, is the ability to tell a story, craft it that way with the best media and production value for everyone. And here we are. We can see it. It's right in our grasp right now.
Very cool. Sophia?
Right, and then piggybacking off of what Tony said, like the infinite personalization aspect of it. And then I think we'll probably come back to this, but the utility of these virtual assets and experiences versus what we currently experience on 2D mediums, where it's just kind of a billboard in front of you, and you kind of have to contextualize what that means to you. Whereas, I feel like it's getting more subliminal in ways, right? Because you can just put it in your daily life, use it as you would in real life, and experience the product as you would, and then be able to make those on-demand decisions.
But it's still kind of clunky too, right? Like point at the QR code and then get, it's getting seamless, but point at the QR code, then get the thing, and then type on the thing, and then what was I doing, right?
Have you ever lost an AR experience in your phone where you're like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Like, I've done that. Yeah, go ahead.
So,
I always think about the consumer first. Like, that's my lens. Like my background is like I'm an ethnographer, consumer ethnographer. And so like the one thing which AR for me or XR has is, first of all, it's taking into account that humans have a body. Like we often in marketing, we always just think about like, there's a brain, and we have to kind of convince the brain to buy anything.
Legs even.
Even legs are part of it. Yeah. And so like there's like tons of cool experiments even. Like if you took a pen and you kind of put it between your teeth and you kind of make you smile by that, so you kind of imitate smiling, and you read the same text message or the same advertisement, you react different to it. And if you put the pen under your nose and kind of start frowning, right? So the body is incredibly important in our decision making even, right? And so for me, XR is like a whole body experience. And for me, that is new for...
Nani, go ahead.
No, I'd love to add on to that idea, which is not only is the body engaged, but we think outside our body. So like, I'll use a mathematical equation because that's a really clear idea that people use a blackboard to do an equation if it's complicated. You need that extra thinking outside the body. So this idea that not only is the body engaged, but we actually, the world itself, the three-dimensional world, is part of how we actually think and perceive and act. And we're just starting to make, have some understanding of the significance of that in the way that we will, not only have experiences, but what's the interoperability? So, what is it going to mean to be able to take ourselves into as many different experiences?
Cool.
And not only interoperability between virtual worlds, but between the virtual world and the physical world.
Yeah.
And what does that mean, and how do we tie those together?
I love that. Personally, I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be an amazing time.
And I mean, that's great, Joachim, that you just brought us right to that, like immediately, because that is the essence of augmentation. I mean, that's what this conference is about, right?
Yeah.
And so we're not talking about going into, a completely artificial cartoon metaverse like all the time, right? We're talking about enhancing the world around us and having digital media make that the best possible experience. And that interweaving is what is super exciting, I think, to a lot of us.
And I think for consumer it is exciting, but if there are brands in the room, that's equally exciting, right? Because in the history of marketing, it was always the brand was external to the consumer. Like the brand was somewhere there, and maybe you get like a window into the brand world through advertisement or something like this, but it's always like this separation. And like the other big term I find is important for AR or XR is hybridization, right? So like you hybridize what is the brand space and what is the consumer space, like going back to the question of like how do we get into consumers' homes?
So there's no barrier. Yeah, it's an experience. So since this is the retail and advertising track, I thought we would specifically look at it through the advertising lens. For me personally, the paradigm shift is, to your point, that XR is an absolute lack of control by the brands. We went from placing to social media to engagement, but we still had some control, whereas really in XR, the people have all the control about what they let in and what they want to deal with. So how will XR transform advertising in a world where reality is the channel, there's no placing, and what you experience is the brand experience? So that is my question to you guys. Run with it.
I mean, I think loyalty takes on a whole new meaning in this space, and engagement is a key part of that, obviously, right? So again, we go back to utility of you're not just viewing the product on the screen anymore. It's how are you using it and how are you engaging with it? And then we bring in social equity, because now we can showcase to the world how connected you are with that brand, and then get rewarded based off of that. So I think we're coming.
You had a great example of that. You want to talk about that?
Well, Kathy Hackle's example working with Clinique, they've recently established like NFTs based on social equity of creating this organic content around their brand. And then they're also, so they have this basically showroom of NFTs that they can showcase for their loyalty towards the brand, which then translates to exclusive physical products as well. So I think that's a really good example of kind of going full circle and blending the virtual and the physical world along with social, which we know now that is proven. So I like that they're utilizing what's known, what's already been proven in the States. So.
Any other comments about the advertising part of it? Like, because for me, I mean, I came from digital advertising background, where engagement was our big word, and all of a sudden you really can engage brands. It's not just a word, it actually is experiential marketing. You're experiencing the brand. So where do you think that's going to be going, again, in a day where if you choose not to see a brand because you hate them and you don't want to see them on a billboard, they get occluded, and then you don't see them at all? What do you do if you're that brand? Right? Tony, you're shaking your head a lot.
Well, I mean, this is such a big topic to unpack. So for 3 years prior to this year, I worked in our ads business. And our ads business for Unity, if you don't know it, we have a mobile game advertising business primarily. It also inserts brand ads to kind of keep it fresh for the people who see game ads all day long. This is for free-to-play gaming. This is the primary way mobile game publishers make money. You may not know that. Our platform reaches like something like 2 billion. I mean, get the stats wrong, and PR is going to kill me for this, but it's something like 2 billion people every month seeing Unity-powered ads across the globe, across Android, across iOS, that are mostly advertising other people's games. Now, who would have thought that would even be a business model? Yeah. And the way that, but here we are. And the way that works is you get to the end of a level and you want to proceed through a free-to-play game. That is an interstitial opportunity to see advertising. Right. You die and you want to get rewarded with another life to keep playing the game, or you fail a level. You watch an ad and you're paying with your attention. In a really interesting interstitial way. In the case of Unity's ads, obviously social ads on mobile have a different sort of place. They get your attention. So going forward with technologies like XR, I'm sure the mix of these modalities will change, and we'll have A lot more of one kind of advertising. I don't know if we're going to be walking around virtual worlds with billboards or what exactly.
I
You're
kinda
probably
hope
not going to
not.
have a full world takeover when you go from one world to another in a portal, and that could happen too. But that sounds really invasive. So we're going to have to experiment with all these formats. But I'm just going to guess they're all going to be there in one form or another. Just we'll see the sliders, the levels change a little bit on that, and maybe some new ones come up. Maybe product placement finally has its day because that hasn't really been a thing in XR yet.
I mean, like all of those different advertising formats, they're gonna exist and keep existing, right? But I think the big mistake marketers often do is to kind of use like the old thinking to like a new technology or like a new medium type, right? And so if we just put advertisements everywhere, like people will not go there. Like
Yeah, they'll
it's
just turn
easy
it
to
off.
avoid, right? So
Yeah.
like the key term, I think we've seen that transition for quite a while. And I speak to storytelling, what you mentioned earlier, Tony, but also like the loyalty aspect is to kind of create experiences. So like in terms of like how do we use this new media format in order to kind of push our brands into its consumers' life worlds? Well, we create like these expansive, extended experiences where consumers can either explore, get like the social value or the identity value Sophia was talking about.
Aha, though, here's the rub on that. And we're seeing a lot, and yes, agreed in theory, but we're seeing some of the experiments with the Ferrari in Fortnite, right? And
Yeah.
I can only imagine how much that cost. And so when you start thinking about the
Right.
actual, the reality of online advertising, you need scale. And when you create something bespoke for certain platforms, this is also going to touch on what Nani was starting to mention about interoperability. We're a long way from getting to a place where you could have like a really good deep brand experience that wasn't this overwrought, super bespoke thing that, you really, when you start looking at the ROI side of this, the return better be really big because you have to invest a lot to produce if you can only run on, say, one platform.
Right.
Or it costs a lot, right? So there's a lot of things to think about there, but I think we are leaning toward maybe trying to go for some deeper experiences that reflect the medium, that reflect values, social values, location, all these other dials we have now. So that's really exciting, but it's so early days that I think everyone is still going to be a little bit, crafted.
I think it's going to, in many ways, I think that might be driven by the consumer, that change.
Right.
Because they're going to have an expectation that they're going to be able to move from space to space. And if they're having to go from bespoke space to bespoke space to bespoke space to see this, it really slows down, it's a real friction on the experience.
Absolutely, and
that's
it's a
what-
friction for creation too. You got to redo the experience, you got to
Yeah.
port it.
Yeah.
So what interests me also is, like I said, I came from digital way back when, and we had brands at the time that were not high engagement brands. So we're talking about creating deep experiences for brands where we want deep experience brands, but we don't want that for every kind of retail and brand out there. So what does a brand do if you're a really low involvement brand and it's a utility kind of relationship? Like that's a different kind of, like, how does XR apply to that?
Well, I think it's the biggest
But
blessing for those
everybody's,
brands.
accustomed to the phone, right? Nobody would think about the smartphone as being, place they wouldn't want to play. And when you know that Apple moved their top hardware guy onto the AR VR team, forget whatever Facebook is doing, you know that it's coming down the pike really, really fast. What kind of AR glasses are going to be out there that are going to ultimately replace the phone? So people aren't going to be able to afford not to be playing in this medium.
I mean, you talked about the consumer potentially having control over what they're seeing, but what if that's not the case? I mean, that's not the case with what we're seeing on our mobile devices and on our computers. It's inferred preferences from AIs and algorithms that are out there. I mean, it could be exactly what that is in virtual. So
I think
I
an
think
interesting
that's gonna
angle
be
to that
interesting.
is that if it's an inferred preference that your AI has chosen for you, that that is a form of advertising placement, right? Really?
sure,
It is.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the brand, along with whoever's controlling these algorithms and these AIs, will have that control over, along with the experiential aspect of learning that user over time. Will have control over what the user sees, and hopefully that turns into an enjoyable experience for the consumer, because ultimately we want to be able to be delivered content that's relevant to us. But then we go into, okay, we have our preferred brands now. How do we
break through that?
Break through that
Yeah.
with new products and in
Yeah.
businesses that are.
Serendipity. How do you have serendipity?
How do you have serendipity? Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think we talked about that once.
But I think what Sophia is kind of make a really good argument here that actually like this idea that control is even less available for marketers is actually more complicated than that, right? So to some extent there's more control for the marketer because through like these AI platforms you could find like an audience. And I would also say that like if your goal, for example, was to have consumer-generated content about your brand or word of mouth, AI is fantastic, right? Because like how many times do you really talk about a brand? And then what brand is it? It's like one we really, really love, right? Because it kind of comes generated by us. But like AR, XR allows you to kind of provide a prompt, like for example, to the face lenses, right?
Well, and then that those recommendations and that word of mouth isn't based now, or won't be based on the product and service they actually provide, but the experience of that XR immersive experience that you're perceiving from the brand. So I think that the preferences will and the recommendations and stuff will change to be more inclusive of the experiential part of it, not solely the product or the service that they sell.
Cool.
I think we're also seeing, and this may be straying far from where you want to
No, it's
take
fine.
this, Linda, but
If it's a good
with
conversation,
the
we're going
rise
to keep
of
going, Tony.
merchtainment and these sort of mega influencers, I think the nature of brand is also changing. It's becoming quite a bit more fluid and quite a bit more ad hoc. I mean, between that, the sort of big celebrity influencers who are their own fashion brands and everything else, but also the rise of direct to consumer. I think you're seeing
Well-
a big shift in what we even define a brand to be.
You opened the door beautifully to the next question, actually, Tony. Thank you
I didn't
for
even
that.
read those prep.
I know. No, because I wanted to apply the same conversation lens to retail, because we talked about the advertising a little bit, but retail is hugely going to be disintermediated because we can have the shopping experience anywhere, right? So we can bring Bloomingdale's to our home if we want to, and vice versa. When we're in Bloomingdale's, we can have AR and XR experiences that will enhance the experience with the brands. So there's two different approaches to retail and XR, and I'm curious to have the same kind of conversation about that, and you did a nice opener there, sorry.
So then I'll take it in a second, and then we can open it up. Yeah, so I happen to also have a blog site, nearfutureretail.com. That's a Medium pub, and I explore some of this there. I'm fascinated by where emerging tech is taking retail. We saw the retail apocalypse sort of in the offing even pre-pandemic, things changing with brick and mortar and the very nature of the stuff shifting and accelerated by the pandemic in a big way. And so I think, why do you advertise in the first place? I mean, you're selling a product or a service, right, typically. I mean, sometimes it's just about the brand itself and building that loyalty, but it's mostly about selling something. And we're seeing so many early returns the last few years of the abilities that 3D brings to sell more. Giving a physical product in particular, the ability to interact with that, simple product spins, AR try-ons,
I'd love
all
try-ons.
that,
I love
huge,
that idea.
and they can show up as ad units as the upper funnel, reach, or they can be a bespoke website or an app, and it's just so fascinating. And that's what I'm doing for my day job these days is trying to bring Unity's technology stack to bear to help with that because it is such an incredible capability in the world.
Right.
And so how that ties into upper funnel and advertising and discovery, that is part of the art of where we're going to go with this. But I think that's mid funnel to an end point is all about a 3D shopping experience.
Do you think there's a role for physical retailers in a world where they can be what they want to be? Their brand can go to the consumer, but to your point, you're going to have direct-to-consumer brands having that relationship and taking that over increasingly because they already have. So one of my questions was actually, what is the future of the retail in store or the actual brands if you can have the brands form a relationship with the consumer directly?
I think we're still going to want to leave our house.
Yeah, definitely.
especially
You're
after
still
lunch.
Now more than
gonna
ever.
want to touch the fabric,
Yeah.
right? You're going to want to have some
True.
feel of the smell or the senses. And there's never a sense of me in any of this that being there with the real body and in person, that's why it's so interesting because you continue to bring your body along.
Right.
And I agree that you might say, hey, I'm going to check this out. Oh, this is a teaser to get me into a place or to a location. But our bodies are always going to be along for the ride here. And I think we can't ignore that. That's part of the really wonderful fabric that we're weaving here is what is it going to be like, this additional augmented place where the story that brands tell, the kind of advertising experiences that can be had, I think would be really, really interesting if we're very, very mindful of how the body might react.
Can I pick up on that? I think also that this leads right to the in-store experience, because we can also talk about augmented technologies in store and things that could happen in terms of, smart displays, the magic mirror kind of stuff, or just having infinite inventory at your disposal, but you're still in the showroom to speak to a sales rep, to have some human contact, to potentially try some of these things on virtually that way. So it may be changes in supply chain and more made-to-order kind of clothing and other stuff, picking up on what Nani was saying. And so, there's no replacement for being in there, but what happens in there may change fairly drastically.
To Tony's point, like the stores have to change. They're not going away, but they have to change. For example, they have to ask themselves the question, like, where does our store start? Right? Like Burger King did this amazing spatial AR advertisement recently where like you scan a poster, like out-of-home poster, and then like a smoke trail kind of appears, and you just follow it along until you arrive at the restaurant. So like the experience, the in-store experience or in-restaurant experience started way before they actually opened the door, right? And so those are important questions.
I think it's going to be more than virtual try-ons, and I think it's going to be a playground experience. I mean, AT&T brought Looney Tunes into their stores, and people are interacting in those ways. I think it's.
It'd be fun if you
I
could
think
take
everything's
a
going to be
Looney Tunes with
gamified,
you.
right?
Yeah.
If you could like leave the store with your own Looney Tunes to come
right.
with you, and
And we've
just
seen
be your
this.
Damon
And
for the day.
there's windows into virtual worlds as well. So again, being able to connect the physical with what's going on in virtual, and maybe connect the consumers not only with the brands but other consumers as well, to again kind of build that, again going back to the social equity, right? Knowing that other people are shopping at this store and other people are engaging with the brand and what they have to offer. But I do think, as you guys have all said, I think the consensus is that there's going to be an evolution of the brick and mortar, not only in how to purchase, but just gamifying the whole experience and being creative about the way we interact, not only with the products, but like this. I'll go back to gamify, just like the fun ways of kind of like building up points to then be able to exchange that for gifts and those types of things by engaging with cool content within the store and in the.
Well, we were talking before this about brands creating their own virtual worlds, and actually, being on Bloomingdale's World, where you could potentially buy a parcel of land on Bloomingdale's World, if that's your, and actually build there and have digital goods there, which leads us to NFTs and digital items, which we haven't really talked on. We said metaverse already once, so we're now going to talk about NFTs.
So if you're playing bingo, like
Yeah, I
metaverse,
know.
NFT,
We get them all out of the way early.
It's going to be a T-shirt
And
at the end.
Again, drink if you're
As I say,
playing
it's a
next-
drinking game. It's a little early for that.
5 o'clock somewhere.
But I mean, how do you see because I mean, this has just kind of started the digital items, the digital goods, and the NFTs, and how is that going to impact on all of this, do you think?
Just I have to say that you can go back and look at Second Life, and they made a ton of money. People made a ton of money with digital goods. That was the economy: gambling, digital goods. Where things went south for Second Life was when advertisers came in and said, "Okay, here's a digital Coca-Cola." And people were like, "Well, what do I do with this? It's just an object. It's just this, and they didn't want to pay for it. What they wanted to pay for was an experience. They wanted to pay for being a bubble that floats up into a Coca-Cola bottle and then they pop and fly up or whatever,
Yeah.
We were letting people shoot themselves out of cannons over the Mexico-US border wall, emulating an artist who'd already done that. I mean, like, that was fun. You got to get yourself shot out of a cannon. You had an experience.
Right.
And I think that that's something which, how does it affect the consumer's experience? And I think you really can't neglect that as, you collect certain tokens and everybody loved to collect their brownie badges, conference, like the Olympics, they always hand out these pins. So how many pins do people get from different countries, or those things are really relate to someone's NFT collection idea. But I think it's going to be really successful if we think about experience.
What do you think of the Balenciaga and the Fortnite joint venture, Nani?
Well, we were really having fun with trying to do that sort of thing with the GCDF, when we were trying to, offering these digital goods, et cetera, early on. But I think Balenciaga took it a whole other, to a whole other level, of course. Digital goods has been a huge and growing marketplace for a long time. I'm just amazed that brands are so slow to get involved.
What about you guys? What do you think of the synergy that's happening between brands and gaming and all those things that would have never happened before, and now that they are in the XR space?
Well, I mean, there are definitely some folks leaning in. Some of the sports leagues are going crazy on the collectibles already. To Nani's point, Second Life kind of proved a lot of this stuff out over a decade ago in a different infrastructure and on a smaller scale, effectively, though. They've still got a thriving thing going there, and it is about the pure digital and that sense of ownership. We are seeing some agencies lean in now. Again, to invoke my buddy Keith from Publicis, they're looking at NFTs a lot as a way for brand experiences and collectibles to come together, and they have to be in ways that are meaningful to the collector.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the current NFT craze is just sort of we're just scratching the surface on consumer interest and creator incentives and how those come together, and we're just like in version 0.1 of this, I think, with that craze right now. But what will remain after the speculation ends on all the pixel art that's happening right now, I think, is this notion that there is that one certificate and actually has meaning more than the digital asset, which we've obviously been funging and never been able to protect in how many years of doing this as an industry. So it seems like there's a real desire for the consumers to have this feeling of virtual ownership. There's definitely a desire for creators to be remunerated properly for it, and not having the marketplaces and networks take an undue vig for it. So you meet in the middle there, and you have a place where brands can play.
It actually will, it will disrupt brands that are out there right now, like the established brands, the same way social media disrupted established brands, right? So if you think about the big cosmetic studios like out there, they got disrupted by influencers just launching their own cosmetics, right? And so what speaks against somebody who can now make a living out of creating virtual clothing, because there's the NFT business model around this, to then at some point of time start moving into the actual world, right? And so suddenly we see like the birth of new brands that are actually creating physical products, and they already have the inbuilt brand loyalty, they already have the inbuilt communications network and the fan base, right? So like we're gonna see like a lot of disruption in the next 10 years, I would think.
It makes me wonder, are they gonna have the data? Are they gonna get the data, though, as we move to this world that's a little more decentralized, right?
Right.
Because the last wave of advertising was defined by
I mean,
access
I think
to
that's
data.
going to be, that's going to be important for adoption from the brand's perspective as well, because as cool as everything might be, if you can't measure it, it just doesn't mean anything to them.
Well, they can measure, but I'm saying, will they have data about the people and the consumption, the way these platforms
Well,
are
and
provided?
is
But they
data-
absolutely need to measure ROI, I agree.
We were talking about this the other day. I wonder, we came up with a data model because that was what the tools we had, right? We could track people on the internet. They had click, they had stickiness. We don't use that term anymore, but we did. All those things. But is that, like, do we have to come up with new metrics for this and completely relook at how things are measured? And that was actually a question I had is, what are some of the critical success factors for brands to actually start using this robustly? And obviously measurement was one of them, but I'd love to hear more. I know you had some thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think Sophia already mentioned like the idea of loyalty, and trust is kind of underlying loyalty, I would say. And like in a world where it's like so super personal, I mean, like right now we're using this on our phones are like extensions of ourselves. Like, how many of you would kind of walk back home if you forgot your phone? Right? Be honest.
Because I wouldn't know where I was going.
Right? So it's like so much part of
my map.
ourselves. Like the gentleman here in the front, you're wearing glasses. Until I pointed out, you probably didn't realize you're wearing glasses necessarily, right? So like all of that technology becomes really us, right? And so we're often using it also in our very sacred spaces. I did this study on like how Sephora's AR app is used by consumers, and they're using it in their bedroom, lying on their bed, and it's like a super sacred personal space running on technology we almost don't recognize as technology any longer. And so there, like if you come in as a brand and you kind of misuse that kind of trust the consumer extends to yourself, you turn like an experience space into transactional space, and then you're blacklisted
And then
like
you're
real
out.
fast. Yeah.
And then
Which
you're
a
out.
lot of cosmetics brands have experienced, actually. At least facial recognition apps, but we won't go there.
How do you think companies should be thinking about incorporating XR into their activities now? What can they be doing to prepare for a time when it isn't hold up the phone, try to find it in the room, other than lying in your bed? But when people, like I said at the beginning, swimming in a sea of XR experiences throughout their day, what should companies and brands be thinking about now to prep for that time? Go ahead, Tony.
I kind of have a stock answer, but it hasn't changed much in the last 3 or 4 years. You need to digitize everything. You need a digital twin of everything, large and small, that
Everything.
relates to your operation. You don't even know which of those assets are necessarily going to be
Right.
valuable, which of course poses the challenge of, that's a big investment to digitize everything.
Yeah.
So you may have to place a few bets, but, some of your main product lines, potentially your facilities, if you are doing brick and mortar, like you need to have that stuff ready. And the applications are endless, whether that's for merchandising planning, user testing, new product development, as well as advertising and marketing. The use cases that spin off that one asset or set of assets are legion. And so the muscle memory that a brand needs to develop or a manufacturer would need to develop is that, how to create and produce that content effectively to then be able to be delivered in lots
And
of venues
manage
like
it.
that.
Can you
And
imagine? Yeah.
manage it, exactly.
That's a big effort, the management part of it. Anything else, guys? Anything you want to add?
I mean,
The other question about this is, how much are you going to let the consumer make, meaning become makers? We understand how much consumers are makers on TikTok, et cetera. How can brands using XR allow consumers to become makers?
Yeah.
Obviously Unity is a fabulous, fabulous tool. And the question is, what do brands want to bring to this to allow the consumer to create with the content that might be, the palette that might be provided by that brand?
100% digitize everything, because you got to start there to be able to put anything virtual out there. And then I'll go into, touch on a little bit of WebXR, which, Ben, Karen, Julie,
yeah.
Linda, we all
Yeah.
work on some of the initiatives
Yeah.
around that. But how is your brand, not just your products, but your brand going to be represented in these virtual spaces? I mean, we're going to transition into this Web 3.0, spatial web, where we're no longer going to be represented by 2D web pages, right? We're going to have the opportunity to build out places and environments and worlds that represent our brand. So I think to start
And
thinking,
interact with.
and
Yeah.
interact with our brand. You can do more things besides showcase products there now. I mean, you can host events and have people connect through those platforms and those mediums. So start thinking about that strategy of how you're going to be represented specifically on the web, I would say.
I was thinking about this a while ago, that for me, one of the closest parallels is actually restaurant design, because brands think about how they want somebody to feel when they walk in, and what is it like to look at this menu. Like, that's actually the closest parallel I could think of. And then the other thing is interact, like they're going to be 3D people looking like, avatars people that you're going to talk to with the brand. And what is that interaction like? What kind of language do they use? Like all those things as well, right?
And so all of those, your ideas like Nani's, Linda's, and Sophia's is kind of the opposite end of Tony, right? Because your answer is more like, you get ready technology-wise, right?
Yeah.
Well, all
It's
of it,
certainly important. And then the other important thing is to be get ready consumer-wise, right? Understanding what are consumers. They're more than just shoppers, right? So
That's right.
people who are trying to kind of create their identities, live
That's right.
good worlds,
Yeah, that's true.
lives. And then what are their moments? What are their everyday moments, and how do we insert ourselves as brands into their lives in these moments? So a deep understanding of the customer. That's what brands have to do also, I think.
So it just
To answer your
comes
question.
down to good old-fashioned marketing, right? Is that what
Nothing
you're saying?
changed.
Nothing
ever.
really changes. Last quick question, because we don't have that much time left. Given all these things we talked about a lot of money. We talked about a lot of management. We talked about potentially screwing it up completely because you piss people off and they don't want you in their lives anymore. Despite all of that, why should brands and companies be looking at getting involved with XR at all then? It's a potential, if we talked about some of the negative things, why do it?
Because you want to create experiences. That's, for me, like, that's the title of the session, Experience Wars, right? And it's not, again, it's nothing new. Like, brands for the last 10, 20 years kind of pushed more and more into experiences. It's really more like adding additional speed to an already existing trend. And so, like, as brands kind of become less transactional and become less kind of around product quality and more about, like, what lives do we enable consumers to live, and that life that we're living is becoming more and more virtual and extended in the metaverse. Here I said it too.
There we go again.
Right? So
Yeah,
like
we got
brands
it.
have to be there.
So I don't personally remember this because I was too young for it,
Oh, please, rub it in, rub it in.
but you know, there was a time where businesses didn't think they had to have a web page.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, they thought it was stupid. And
Oh, yeah.
and-
Build a website.
Yeah.
So I'm old, yes, I'm old.
And if they don't, plain and simple, if they don't, they're going to be left behind.
Right.
That's
You
right.
know, so you know, stay in front of it, stay in front of the trends, at least do the small things that you can and stay strategizing about it, even if you're not necessarily implementing now. But
And
if
you can, right now, as a brand, you can speak out to amazing businesses that have just been, or launching, that, you know, can help you with what kind of clothing, how to track engagement, you know, what kind of CMSs you might need to, for XR. Those things are already being built. I think my friend Ashley Crowder might be there. You should check out
Ashley's
Ashley
here
Crowder,
today, I
what she's
think.
doing.
Yeah.
And if you know, that's the future. And you don't have to make this all from scratch. So you got the people who are already helping establish what you might need to build upon.
All right, well, thank you, guys. That was it. We have a few minutes for questions. Yes. Anybody have anything they want to ask any of our wonderful panelists?
Last thing I wanted to plug, I've just started a new hat as the founding director of a new center in downtown Los Angeles, at the cool Herald Examiner building, and it's a center on narrative and immersive media. So if that's interested to anybody, that will be starting a graduate program next year and have an amazing space for brands and advertisers to start to experiment. We've got virtual production, we've got incredible computers, welcome collaboration for those who want to get their feet wet but aren't yet sure what to do.
Sounds fascinating. I love that. And how do people find you guys?
You find me at joachimscholz.com or thearprofessor.com.
nice, love
Like
that.
that.
Sophia Moshe on Twitter and Sophia Moshasha on LinkedIn, if you can spell that.
Tony, do you want people to find you?
TonyParisi.com, @Aura Deluxe.
Cool.
And best one for me is Nonny, Nonny at reach.love. Just like it sounds. I love you. Nonny at
Love you, Nonny.
reach.love.
That was sweet. I'm lindaritchie.com if you want to find me. And no questions at all?
We're very
Oh,
Caution.
okay, you have a question.
We answered everything.
Great panel, by the way. I guess,
Forgot my
Tony,
dog.
maybe this is more for you, but when you're thinking about content pipeline for retailers, for clothing in particular, what are you guys doing at Unity to help with that kind of scaling creation? Because for fully networked multiplayer worlds, it doesn't happen quickly.
Yeah, it doesn't at all. It's very different for real-world clothing or other physical goods. We recently acquired a company called Pixies that's doing a lot of hard CAD data conversion. Can't speak to anything in the soft goods like clothing area at the moment. We can talk about that later when we're ready to talk about product. The company's just not ready to say anything yet there. But you should, Nani mentioned Ashley, so you should come to the panel. I'm not sure which room, it might be in this
I'm not
track?
sure.
Yeah, I think it's at 2:15 today, Ventana. They're doing great work in converting clothing and all that. So you've got a, long story short, you need automated tools to do it. You need automated tools that the people who work in that soft CAD can actually deal with, and they're not game engines, so you need a completely different interface for that stuff. I mean, these are designer folks, right? So it's a big nut to crack, and it's kind of almost sector by sector. There are recipes for converting the data. There's a lot of magic in there. There's machine learning and a bunch of stuff. And it's still kind of early days for that, but super promising.
Very cool. Anybody else? I have lights in my face, so it's kind of hard to see if there's anybody who raises their hand. No? We wowed you so much. Nobody has any questions?
needs
Come on.
coffee.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.